Romania is a land of 1,000 faces. The crossing point between the Occident and the Orient, and a melting pot of different cultures. It is also a country unlike any other in Europe. With over 60% of the Carpathian Mountains weaving through it, Romania is the custodian of Europe's last great wilderness area, its largest remaining forest, and 2/3 of its surviving alpha predators. But increasingly, this unique country's natural and cultural heritage is under threat from reckless development and a race to modernize, which is often destroying the very things that could ensure prosperity and a sustainable livelihood for generations to come. This week, we are exploring Muntenia, also known as Greater Wallachia, a region once presided over by Vlad the Impaler, whose famous cruelty as a ruler spawned the legends that inspired Bram Stoker's iconic novel Dracula. To separate fact from fiction, my first stop is Poianar, Vlad Tepes's ruined fortress. I'm here to meet a man for whom Dracula tourism is not just a vocation, it's in his blood. Jacob.
Charlie, how are you? Nice to see you.
Very well.
First of all, what relationship are you to Bram Stoker?
Bram was my great-granduncle. That means that his youngest brother is my great-grandfather.
It's quite a legacy, isn't it?
It is.
And it's a ripping yarn. I mean, it's a fantastic story, but he never actually came to Transylvania, did he?
No. He was a guy that did a lot of research back in London and in Ireland. He did a lot of books, Baedeker Guide, and 5 or 6 other books that put him here.
And a huge amount of imagination.
Absolutely. I mean, half of it really is reality. The other half is Bram's fantasy.
So this book has, in terms of phenomena, quite literally spawned a monster, hasn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, the legacy of Dracula has done a lot of things, not just Bela Lugosi and Christopher Lee and others.
But it has unfortunately caused quite a lot of controversy amongst the Romanian people because, they're very proud of their heritage and their history. It's a very rich history. And yet most people in America, for example, associate Transylvania with blood-sucking fiends and werewolves. Yeah. And in fact, I would imagine that most people think that Transylvania is a country rather than part of Romania.
Right. I feel a little responsible for some of the misconceptions that Bram took their national hero, Vlad Dracula, and turned him into a Hollywood vampire. And the legacy of the family, I'm trying to separate these two.
Well, let's go and have a look at the fortress.
Let's do it.
Hopefully you can tell me a bit more.
Okay, let's go. I think that's kind of neat. You have a bit of a challenge to get up here when you consider the history of the boyars that had to make this thing without 480 steps.
You wouldn't sign up for this readily, would you?
Not unless there was a whip at your back or a chance of impalement.
The history here is very, very brutal, isn't it? I mean, his wife jumped from these battlements to her death.
It's an actual story that Jim Hart, the screenwriter for the '92 Coppola movie, Bram Stoker's Dracula, used. He actually took that real story and merged it with his mythology to create how Vlad became a vampire. What happened was, as she jumps out and, of course, is dead, he comes back after a good day fighting and finds his poor wife dead, and he brings her back, and, of course, because she committed suicide, the church wouldn't give her a consecrated burial.
And that's when Tepes fell out with the church, historically.
Yeah.
And, of course, many forget that he was a tremendous hero for the people.
And that's another part of, proper responsible vampire tourism, is the Dracula that we know as the vampire really was a national hero. Vlad Dracula had 3 reigns, and during that time, he held back the Ottoman Empire. He made deals with the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. He was a hero. Brutal reign in brutal times, but he was one of their national heroes.
So what constitutes sensitive vampire tourism exactly?
Well, the impact I can make is separate the two. Vlad Dracula, the historical national hero, and the Count Dracula Bram Stoker started and then everyone else is taken to the nth degree, is separate these two, show the differences and celebrate the two, because really, if you're smart about it, you can get double the tourism.
I guess we could say that even if people come here for maybe the wrong reasons or because they're motivated by wanting to see what they think is going to be a film set, it's good that they're here in the first place. And it's a wonderful education for them to discover a country which is so unlike any expectations they would have had.
Well, it is. And some of these places, these towns like Viskry and Crit and Malencraft with the fortified churches, it's the way the life was back in the 15th century. It's an amazing stepping into what looks like a movie set, but it's real life.
Do you think it can survive?
I think there's effort needed to keep it surviving, Charlie. I think that the Mihail Eminescu Trust and those folks do a great job, but I think it needs to be really encompassed by the government and say this is worth keeping. Let's not ignore it, because I think us as tourists love to come in and see it, and not many places left like this on Earth. But doing it right, educating people how to actually sustain this tourism, I mean, everything that involves people coming in and doing it slowly, learning how to do it right, I think is just key.
While Muntenia is historically one of the most important regions in Romania, it is also perhaps the most cosmopolitan, with its centre of administration located in the country's capital, Bucharest. Home to the People's Palace, one of Europe's largest buildings, Bucharest is a big, sprawling metropolis, peppered with lakes and parkland. It was redesigned under Ceausescu to symbolise the might of the communist regime. Today, many improbably large neoclassical edifices compete with crumbling Habsburg architecture, 70s apartment blocks, and contemporary steel and glass. One of the victims of this industrial redesign is the river Dâmbovița, which cuts straight through the heart of the city like a concrete causeway, lined on either side by roads and one-way traffic systems. But plans are afoot to declog this vital urban artery, and much in the same way as the Thames in London or the Seine in Paris, reclaim the riverbanks for the pedestrians. I caught up with friend and conservationist Theodor Frolu, who is spearheading the movement.
Looking at this, it's most encouraging to see that some of the riverbank is actually turning into a more social environment, but it's only one place, isn't it?
Yeah, but always we have to start somewhere. And this was the idea when 4 years ago we start with changing the age of the river. So it was very important for us to bring people next to the river and create this new relation with the river. And to see people sitting around and looking to the water, this is a very important value for the city, which Bucharest forget about.
Yeah, because it's quite tough. You've got roads all the way along the sides of the river, haven't you?
Yes, and this is one of the biggest problems. This is a good area because it's the only one where you have such a big distance from the traffic to the water.
Yeah, I suppose by at least achieving that here, you can show people how it could look further up the river.
Yes, this was the idea, and that's why we create this platform or NGOs and different partners and try to animate and bring life on the water.
And how clean is the water?
Right now it's really clean because in the last 3 or 4 years, money invested in the sewage system. So right now what we see here, it's...
So the two don't intermingle?
Yeah, and this is the reason why we start this type of activities on the water, because it's the best way to make people in contact.
How much support have you got from the government and the people of Bucharest?
We have support, but with ups and downs, as usual. Our role is to create bridges with the public administration and try to show what we are dreaming is not only our dream, it's a people dream around the river.
It would transform the heart of Bucharest if you were able to do this. I mean, you create a space for people to come and drink coffee and chat. I mean, I know Bucharest has got some beautiful parks, but this is such a wasted opportunity.
Yeah, but the problem is, are too many entities involved. For example, just to do what we've done here, these balconies and this different way of relation with the river, we had to negotiate with 6 different institutions. But the important moment happened because we succeed to do this. And the people like it. The young people start to show their love in these places. The emotion is here for the city. So what
I think I know what you're going to ask me. I think I know what you're going to ask me. Well, I'm not really dressed for it, but I suppose I could give it a try.
No, but you have to try this feeling to be on the water in the middle of Bucharest.
Is this really the only place you can paddleboard on the river in Bucharest?
Yes, this moment is the only place. But we hope we will continue to virus the river with
Spread
this.
it up and downstream.
Yes,
till
yes, exactly.
The whole river becomes a national park. That would
Yes.
be wonderful. Well, I've swum the Amazon, I've swum the Thames, and I think I'm about to swim the Dębovica. Yeah. No rush, no rush.
The water is not cold, it's very hot, so don't you worry.
No, I'm not worried.
Let us help you a little bit. Okay, Charlie.
I'm on.
Don't forget to take your paddle board.
Yeah, paddle helps. Okay, let's go. I'm doing this.
Reverse the paddle.
Reverse the paddle.
Yeah, like this.
Yeah, let's just balance first and, you know, work out what to do with the paddle in a minute.
Relax a little bit.
Yeah.
Eyes forward.
You should be able to just do that and not. Ah! Try to avoid doing that. Whew. It's cold. Well, I've done it, and it's not so bad. That's the worst that can happen. And that was really nice, refreshing. The water's clean, it's not too bad. So I'd recommend this to anyone. Come and do it, it's fun. Fully immersive experience.
A quick change of clothing later, and we head north towards the southern Carpathians that give Muntenia its name. On the edge of the mountains is a small town called Berca, which is famous for a bizarre geological occurrence peculiar to this region. At first glance, this is a landscape that more closely resembles the surface of the moon. Mud volcanoes, so called for obvious reasons, occur as gas erupts from 3,000 meters underground, rising through layers of clay and water and pushing salty mud upwards until it bubbles to the surface, forming a volcano-shaped cone. Resident and guide Thorsten Kircher took me on a bracing hike to one of them.
That looks like soup.
It's like chorba, but it's not recommended to eat it. It's not recommended to swim it or to use it as a beauty.
There's a beauty treatment.
No.
Because it's probably quite acidic, isn't it?
Yes.
And the gas that's bubbling up, I mean, if I was to get a lighter and put it there, it wouldn't just go bang like a giant zit.
To be honest, I don't know, but there's a big sign in the entrance not to smoke here.
Yeah. I imagine people come here and film.
Yes, they do video clips here. Even for weddings is used, so people come here with the white.
To get married?
Yeah, and but not to get married, but to make photos then
Right.
together with the mud. Obviously, it's a nice contrast.
While the mud volcanoes are well promoted and lots of people come here, there is another place nearby, far less well known, where crude oil, rather than mud, bubbles to the surface.
These are the hidden mud volcanoes of Berca. There are even people from the village who don't know this place, and when they bring them here, they are amazed and they say, wow, I didn't know that.
It's another one of Romania's best kept secrets.
Yes, really. This area of Buzău will be part of the UNESCO Geopark, which is called Land of Buzău.
You hear it bubbling.
Yeah, and this is a unique spot in Romania, and I would say even in Europe. It's not only water and mud coming out here, it's crude oil which is bubbling.
What kind of idiot thinks that it's cool to chuck beer cans and plastic bottles in something as amazing as this?
This is the sad part of the story. We found everywhere in this region.
But it's that
like,
mentality I don't get, you know, and you see it all over Romania. You see something that's really beautiful, so, hey, let's trash it.
That's why we needed really to protect this area as well.
Yeah. Well, hopefully when they're chucking a beer can in, they're also lighting a cigarette.
Yes. Yes.
Darwin's law of natural
Yes.
selection.
As well as working to promote the area, Thorsten and his wife Geranda have a home cookery school located at their palatial villa on the edge of town. I arrived to find an Epicurean feast.
Geranda,
Welcome.
you weren't joking when you said that you had something special
Not
prepared.
at all, no.
He's making jokes,
Yeah,
but not about food.
Not about food. Well,
No.
you do this for a living, don't you?
Yes, of course, we are trying.
What have we got? Talk me through this amazing spread.
We've got all the dishes that we are making for our events. We are trying as much as we can to deliver good food, local food, seasonal food, and everything is homemade. This is a local sausage. It's called babik. It's very spicy. The pate, it has a little bit of alcohol in it. Zakuska, but with added value. Truffles, because in this area you can go truffle hunting, so, you know, why not?
And asparagus, not so local, which is a shame.
Yes.
Because I bet you could grow it very well here, couldn't you?
I'm pretty sure of it.
And if we can grow it in England, then I don't think there's any real reason why it needs to be imported from abroad.
For sure. Bread, simple, like a basket.
Yeah.
And the other one is with fried onion, with local cheese and herbs and olives. And this is a truffle macchiato. Soup based on champignons and truffles.
Truffles served chilled?
You can serve it
Hot or cold?
cold.
Do you have a cookbook?
Not yet. But we are going to.
Yeah, that's an
We are
oversight.
going to because this is pity for the others.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
we have to share it.
I imagine you might get chefs coming here as well. I mean, it would be good to get some of the Romanian chefs in various places to come and learn things like this.
I would like this very much, really.
I don't even know where to start. There's just so many delicious things on this table.
So I will give you a little bit of bread.
Okay. I'm trying a piece of that zakuska as well. Zakuska with truffles is such a great idea.
Thanks.
That is amazing. You saw it here first. But I think probably quite a few people are going to copy that.
I don't have a problem.
Great, because I was going to ask you, can we have some of your recipes, please? I think people after seeing this are going to want to be able to try and cook some of this for themselves.
Burka sits at the mouth of the Buzău River Valley, which winds down from the surrounding hills. This area, marking the boundary between the flatlands of the south and the Carpathians to the north, has seen its fair share of historic battles. Here, the Roman invaders fought skirmishes with the native Dacian tribes, who were forced to retreat back into the safety of the mountains. But their footprint still exists to this day, if you know where to look. Luckily, I had an eminent historian to show me.
This region is full of history like entire Buzău County. We have Bronze Age settlements, we have Iron Age, and also we have a lot of Stone Age settlements. Around 4,000 years ago, the Bronze Age people used that area like a graveyard. But it's very interesting that they don't dig the graves in the earth. They dig graves in the stone.
So they cut the graves out of the rock.
And in the 70s, when they cut that part of the hill, they discovered the human bones and the ceramic and a lot of bracelets and other artifacts. 70 million years ago, here was the bottom of the Sarmatian Sea. And actually it is the secret because in that part of Romania, it is one of the greatest wine in entire Romania because the color comes from the shells.
Ah, okay. So you've got the calcium that goes into the
exactly.
vines, which is why I've driven through so many vineyards on the way up. The Dacians were inhabiting this part of the mountains a lot.
Yes, actually they love that part of the mountains, of the first hills, and they can see days before the armies when they come.
It must have been terrifying if you were the Dacians looking at the Roman army advancing towards you across this plain. I mean, you would have probably had, what, a day or two to run to the hills?
If you make a big fire here for announce the enemy,
yeah, they're going to
people
see it.
from there can see you and
Pretty much near Brasov, they're going to see it.
yeah,
aren't
something
they?
like that.
Yeah.
Driving west into the foothills, you encounter remote villages and isolated towns, separated by valleys, alpine pastures, and mixed forest that carpets the landscape in a symphony of green. This is a largely untamed world, where the bear and the wolf and even their more domesticated cousins still run wild. Our destination is a small town called Slănic, home to what is claimed to be the largest salt mine in Romania.
There's not a lot to see, but that's because most of the action happens downstairs.
Unlike the more publicized mines at Turda, Slănic is still operational. However, a large section of it is now open to the public and a great place to spend a rainy day, or indeed shelter from a nuclear holocaust. The mine is certainly impressive. However, the attractions could do with a bit of an update. The saline air makes it an ideal location for health spa facilities and treatment rooms. A location like this, if done well, could provide more employment and generate a big income for the local town, with less risk than the miners faced many years ago.
This has to be the world's largest chainsaw. It gives you a pretty good idea of what life must have been like before the invention of health and safety.
Back on the surface, it was time to leave the foothills behind and head deeper into the mountains. This is Bușteni, a resort town in the Prahova Valley. Its name literally translates as tree logs, but recently the timber trade has taken a back seat to the tourist industry, providing a popular destination for hikers in the summer and skiers in the winter. I'm here to visit a particularly grand building that has recently been restored to its original splendor. Cantacuzino Castle, built in a neo-Romanian style by Prince George Grigore Cantacuzino in 1911, was restituted to his descendants following the fall of communism and sold to private investors in 2004. It is now open to the public as an events venue, museum and first-class restaurant. To learn more about the man who built it, I joined official guide David Laurențiu for the grand tour.
I'm getting the impression that the Prince Cantacuzino was extraordinarily rich.
Yes, he was the richest Romanian from that time. His nickname was Nababu, a richest Arabian prince, the right translation.
Well, if he's rich by Arabian prince standards, then that's definitely wealthy.
Yes.
I suppose all these characters on the murals here were relatives of his, were they?
Yes. During the communist time, they was a little bit lucky, because all the things around the castle was stole. Also, this one supposed to be taken down and maybe disappear without any trace. But the one who was bring to do that decided to hide them. The workers, they covered all the paintings with a layer of paper, a layer of textile, and after that, they paint over.
Oh, so they hid them, so it seemed like it was a painted wall.
Yes, yes, and a few people know what was under the paintings. They was uncovered in late 70.
You can see why the communists would take exception to these characters.
Yes, yes.
They're not particularly the sort of people who would perpetuate the myth of social equality.
Yes, yes.
Nice windows.
Yes, because this was the office of Prince Cantacuzino. Here, on the left side, it was a stage, and on that stage was the prince's office. He always looked people from top.
So he liked to look down a little bit.
Yes, he was very proud about him, so...
Yeah. He was also clearly very proud of his moustache.
Yes, I'm pretty sure. I think
Look
it was
at the size of that thing.
a trademark for Prince Cantacuzino.
It's down here. That's like the handlebars on my motorbike. And these are family members.
Family members, yes.
Also kept up the tradition.
Yes, yes, yes. This was the fashion.
It was
that
the fashion in those days, exactly.
But take a look how nice ladies was in that fine.
It's not really what we today would describe as sexy, but it was still the sort of Victorian era of primness and propriety.
Cantacuzino Castle has also become an acclaimed gastronomic stopover for people travelling between Bucharest and Brasov. with a constantly changing menu of traditional and avant-garde cuisine. Chef Marianne Lambert took time out from the chaos to show me a couple of signature dishes.
So what are we cooking?
O să gătim o rață și un pește întreg, care îl vom găti cu legume proaspete.
Did you invent these recipes?
Nu, trebuie să iei puțin de la fiecare, ce mai bun, să creezi invenția ta. Este marinată cu miere, vin alb, sare, piper, toată marinata se pune peste ea, să se curgă. Multe legume prin ea, ca să-și ia un gust foarte bun.
It's already looking good.
Dăm ulei de puține. Vom mai pune niște piper și sare.
Salt from the Himalayas? Yeah. Not salt from Slanik or Turda salt mine. We should be buying local. Yeah.
Și acum facem peștele, care este un sibas. Îl vom cresta pentru a prinde aromele în interior foarte bine, sare și piper să pătrundă în carne. Acum vom pune puțină lămâie în interior, într-o aromă bună. Vom lua câteva cuțe de rozmarin.
Rosemary, yeah.
Da? Foarte proaspăt. Puțin coriandru și busuioc de asemenea.
And basil.
Pe care vom lua sare și piperul.
And do you slow cook this to let the flavor come out?
Da, tot ce se gătește încet, devine foarte bun, foarte aromat, foarte gustos.
There you go. It's that simple, folks. I think the fish is ready.
Da? Și am pregătit și garnitură specială pentru el, da? Cu niște legume foarte proaspete, da? Niște sparanghele roșii sherry și un sos din roșii, măsline calamata, ulei de măsline, extra virgin și vom pune o frunziță de busuioc proaspăt.
Well, whoever ordered that is in for a treat. Alas, it wasn't me. That's going outside, but I've got the duck to wait for. And I think I still have enough time to change for dinner.
Okay.
See you in a bit. So we've tried to recreate what it might have been like for the Prince of Cantacuzino, eating in his opulent residence with all his relatives gazing down on him as he tucks into some incredible dish with a host of servants waiting on his every need. Merci mult. The sauce is sensational. Really good. Huh. I can't really imagine that this happened to the prince very often, but it's nice that a place like this is open to everybody.
Cantacuzino Castle sits in the shadow of the Carpathian Peaks, which dominate the skyline and afford breathtaking views. A short ride by cable car takes you to the top of Buceci National Park and a series of rock formations that are steeped in folklore. The Sphinx attracts tourists from across the country who flock here to marvel at its strikingly human features. But according to archaeologist Oana Giochel, we are by no means the first visitors to have made this connection.
Still looks like a pile of rocks.
True, but wait one more moment. And
Okay.
you'll...
It really depends on what angle you look at it, doesn't it?
Exactly.
And now you can see the lips and the eye.
Yes.
Yeah. Not much of a nose.
Not much of a nose. There's two stories. One that the nose was blown off by the World War I army, and another one that it just fell off in ancient times.
But these are just stories, though. We don't have any evidence for this.
Yeah, it's more like legends of some sort.
Where do you think people's fascination with these rocks comes from?
Well, I think there's a variety of reasons, but one is that it really looks like a human face. It's very surprising for people to find this. At this elevation, we are above 2,200 meters, and all of a sudden, you see this, and it's also a gigantic size. It's about 6 meters high.
It's interesting that people are so intrigued by it. I mean, what's the special significance for you?
I remember I was 7 years old, and I came here, and I was moved to tears. And so that's why I decided later on to make a film about it.
And what's the general consensus from a scientific point of view?
From the scientific point of view of the Romanian Academy, it's a completely natural rock formation.
Okay, so it hasn't been touched by man, according to the experts.
Yes, but again, the experts have never really spent time here. They have never ever did any archaeological dig. they just stuck by the,
Yeah.
without
the
knowing.
official
really.
line.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. It could be completely natural, doesn't mean that people wouldn't find this attractive and interesting and special and want to gather here.
It's a difficult one, really, isn't it? Because there's no proof, but there's so many people that find this such an extraordinary place. I mean, I've heard lots of stories about Bucec. The Americans here, missile silos, crashed helicopters, weird, spooky electromagnetic energy. There's got to be some truth somewhere.
Yes, I mean, there's so many. There was a really famous book written about 10 years ago. It's a mystery of who was the author, but it's a book about the Sphinx being the site of where CIA, FBI were searching an underground chamber where they found really big bones and big skulls of aliens.
I knew it was only a matter of time before the word aliens came into this conversation. But you see, that's the point. Everyone's got their theory. It's that kind of place. It inspires theories.
And I would say that when I did the film, people constantly ask me if I saw somebody from the U.S. Army, from the CIA. They ask me if I belong to the CIA or
Were
FBI,
you being followed?
if I was followed. And there were times where I did felt like somebody was following.
But they're obviously very good at it because you didn't spot them.
Yes.
But do you think that these rocks have been, shall we say, surgically enhanced?
Just a bit, at the eye.
A little bit of
mouth.
cosmetic surgery took place at some point. Well, any one of these rocks could be something. They've all got very unique shapes. I mean, you've got that one that looks like a mushroom behind us. And, yeah, that one over there, which I hesitate to say what that looks like. Perhaps it's a fertility symbol. But,
yes.
yeah. And the other thing to bear in mind is that this is not in Transylvania. So, I'm sorry, Transylvania. You know, you're a very big region. You've got lots of lovely things to promote, but this isn't yours. This is Montaigne.
Yes, that's right.
Exactly, so tough.
Montaigne has the Sphinx.
It does. Natural geomorphologic, not man-made. Gift shopping at altitude. A mini Sphinx to take home, your very own.
Mini Sphinx.
A mini Sphinx, depending on the size of your gift shelf. The thing I don't really understand is this. What would you say, from an archaeological point of view? And the American black bear.
Yeah.
Not the European brown bear, of course. But that's a minor detail. Plus, of course, it's eating a salmon. And to the best of my knowledge, bears don't eat salmon in Romania very often. I think this is probably the most useful item you could have here. Sure. A compass. Just what we need. Especially if I'm going to be riding my bike that way into the mountains. With no sat-nav because there's no signal. This could come in handy.
Separating Romanian mythology from historical fact is rarely an easy task. My next stop is Corbe de Piatra, or the Church of the Stone Ravens, which features ancient man-made chambers hewn into the walls of a cliff. Like the Sphinx, there are numerous schools of thought regarding its origin, but many historians now believe it predates Christianity entirely and has much earlier pagan roots dating back to Neolithic times.
What a fairy tale landscape. I feel like I've ridden magically into the pages of a children's picture book.
While looking around, I met a university professor who has been coming here since he was a child.
My parents, they grew up here. My father died 15 years ago, but my mother, she still lives around. She's just 62 years old, so she is quite...
Still a spring chicken. For people who live in this village, it seems to me that's quite young, isn't it?
That's true, yes. We are 2 brothers and 3 sisters, and we decided to leave for studies. For instance, I made a part of my studies in France, and then I was traveling to Denmark, and then I started to travel the world.
But you are unusual in the sense that you're a person who comes back and chooses to spend all the time you can in the village of your birth, where a lot of people in communities like this just leave.
This is also the situation of some young people here. At a certain point, we feel the need to leave in order to discover ourselves. But while coming back, you rediscover yourself, which is about places that you know, feelings that you have, smells that you understand.
And your identity is defined by where you've grown up and evolved. So
I think that
you have to embrace
yes. I have a grave here in this place.
You've booked a spot, have you?
Yes, so it's already
waiting, yeah. Well, I think if there was a slogan for this community, it would be, there's no rush. Because people seem to be living well into their 80s and 90s.
It's really an amazing place, and I think that this state of being amazed is given by the people. That they are still keep the traditions, and they are proud of this place. That's proud in a good sense. Proud of their place, of their neighbors, their families, and what they live on a daily basis, I would say.
To get a deeper understanding of the relationship between the caves and the church, I sought guidance from local minister Ignatius Geremona Goronescu.
Istoria acestui loc, acestui monument, este bimilenară. De acum 2000 de ani ni se spune de către istoricii care au cercetat cu deamănuntul locașul acesta, locul acesta, că primii creștini au folosit o peșteră naturală care era ascunsă în inima stâncii acesteia de gresie și au folosit-o în 3 scopuri. Biserică, loc unde se săvârșeau Sfintele Slujbe, ca ascunzătoare, pentru că atunci, în primele secole ale creștinismului, era o prigoană mare împotriva credinței creștine, și apoi ca loc de unde se propovăduia Sfânta Evanghelie. În 1300 avem de-a face cu pictarea bisericii rupestre, lucru care se vede și astăzi în biserică. Este cea mai veche pictură care se păstrează în România.
Numaiești, Certesoia and Corbie de Piatra all have their origins pre-Christian, but they've all become very important spiritual sites. What's the reason, do you think, for this?
Noi știm din spiritualitatea înaintașilor noștri, daci, că ei aveau o credință monoteistă. Credeau într-un singur zeu atotputernic și, un lucru foarte important, credeau în înviere. Credeau în viața de după moarte. Pentru poporul român a fost o trecere foarte simplă de la păgânismul precreștin la credința creștină.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk. It was great to meet you.
Și pentru noi a fost mare bucurie și mare plăcere. Și vă mai așteptăm pe la noi.
Mersi mult.
Corbie de Piatra is one of 3 cave churches that form a spiritual triangle in this remote part of Muntenia. The second may have originated as a hermit's dwelling, but has since seeded both a chapel and a thriving monastery. Namaiești, near Campolung, is more of a village, populated almost entirely by nuns, who do everything from running the gift shop to trimming the lawn. 100 steps take you up to the courtyard, where I had a date with the boss.
I'm a bit nervous because I'm about to meet the Mother Superior, who certainly, in English tradition, is quite a severe character. But apparently this one's rather bubbly, and more than that, she's a poet. She's set up an ethnographic museum and collected all these wonderful garments, which tell many stories, apparently. Cum se numește poezia?
Se mărită Ilenica, fata popii.
Te rog.
Gheorghiță cel frumos și iubitor se însoară azi cu Ilenuța cea cu minte. El e băiatul Domnului învățător, iar ea e fata Domnului părinte. De-a dreapta și de-a stânga lor stau nașii cu mândrie. Ei le-au fost nași de botez și acum sunt nași de cununie. Apoi privirea ți-a atrasă și nu te saturi să privești. Surorile miresii parcă sunt zâne din povești. Și tot prin frumusețea lor, surorile de mire, ca 2 flori de albăstrele, atrag orice privire. și cuscrele sunt bucuroase și lacrimi au în gene, parcă mai ieri au fost și ele, Ilene Cosânzene. Nici cuscri nu sunt mai prejos, mândri-s nevoie mare, că satul întreg este cu ei la marea sărbătoare. Și acum spune una din bunici: o, Doamne, cum mai trece vremea, cum trec și florile din glastră, parcă mai ieri se adunase satul întreg la nunta voastră. Privind apoi spre mirii, care plutesc de fericire, ca mâine ei vor fi bunici, totul rămâne amintire.
Bravo. Frumos.
For the final corner of the triangle, we have to head far off the beaten track to a solitary hill between Valea lui Coman and Valea Chililor, and overlooking the Dâmbovița River. At 880 meters above sea level, Cetățoia Negru Vodă Monastery has been described as the Meteora of Romania.
Well, it's a bit of a stroll to get up here. It reminds me of the Cerna Valley in Elets and some of those villages in the hills. In fact, it's a bit like some Himalayan temple, especially with that music. It's a very mystical environment.
Built on the site of an ancient citadel, the rocks and caves carry carved symbols from the pre-Christian era.
Well, this region reminds me of Kolts, where there are also prehistoric caves, now chapels, monasteries or churches. And what makes it so interesting is that these are just the ones we know about. I'm sure out there in the mountains, in the valleys, on the hilltops, there are others that people are either keeping secret or have forgotten about or are waiting to be discovered. And that's the beauty of Montaigne. And coming here, walking through these hills and mountains, who knows what you can find.
Join us next time when we will be leaving the mountains behind and heading east to Dobroja, the Black Sea coast and Europe's largest wetland, the majestic Danube Delta. I'll be doing a spot of fishing, walking in the footsteps of an ancient pre-Christian civilization, learning some dance moves and covering myself in mud. This and more in Flavors of Romania.